would have the guts to do that either, I don't think.
Well, it's just the basic. I know everyone says it
It
sounds...
didn't start with a scandal. There were no headlines, no breaking news alerts flashing across screens, no whispers turning into chaos. Just silence. The kind of silence that slowly builds over time, the kind people don't notice until it's already too heavy to ignore. For decades, she stood in the spotlight, confident, fearless, untouchable. At least that's what the world believed. That's the version people saw, the version they admired, the version they held on to. But behind the music, behind the performances, behind the carefully crafted image, there was something she never talked about. Something she buried so deep that even time couldn't erase it. Something even her most loyal fans, those who followed her journey, memorized her lyrics, defended her name, never truly understood. Because when you build your identity on strength, when the world expects you to be unshakable, you don't get the luxury of falling apart. You don't get to be vulnerable. Instead, you hide it. You carry it. Eventually, you become it. And she did exactly that. For years, for decades, for a lifetime that felt longer than it should have. But now, at 64, something has changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but undeniably. She's finally ready to talk. Not because she wants attention, not because she needs validation, but because the silence has become louder than the truth itself. Because the truth is heavier than the image she spent years protecting. And once you hear it, once you truly understand it, you won't just see her differently. You'll question everything you thought you knew. Long before the fame, before the stage lights, before the world ever knew her name, she was just a girl with a guitar and something to prove. There were no crowds cheering for her, no cameras capturing her every move, no validation from the outside world. Just a quiet determination that refused to fade. At 14, she picked up her first instrument, not because it was easy, not because it was expected, but because it challenged her. Because somewhere along the way, someone told her she couldn't. Maybe it was said casually, maybe it was meant as a joke, or maybe it was a reflection of a world that had already decided her limits before she even began. But that single moment, that single sentence became fuel. From that point on, it wasn't just about learning chords or playing melodies. It became personal. It became a mission. She practiced for hours, pushing herself beyond comfort, beyond frustration, beyond doubt. Her fingers would ache, her progress would feel slow, but she kept going until the sound she created finally matched the fire inside her. And yet, talent wasn't the hardest part. The real challenge was something much deeper, being taken seriously in a world that wasn't built for her. Every comment, every look, every subtle dismissal reminded her of that. These weren't just obstacles, they were warnings, signals telling her to stay in her place, to lower her expectations, to walk away before she got too far. But she didn't, because quitting wouldn't just mean giving up, it would mean proving them right. And that was something she refused to do. Success didn't come overnight. It rarely does. It built slowly, piece by piece, moment by moment, until one day it felt like everything changed all at once. And when it came fast. Suddenly, she wasn't just playing music anymore. She was becoming something bigger than herself. A symbol, a voice, an attitude that people connected with in ways even she didn't fully understand at first. People admired her confidence, her rebellion, her refusal to follow rules that never made sense to begin with. She represented something bold, something different, something people didn't even realize they needed until they saw it. But what they didn't see, what no one outside the spotlight could truly understand, was the pressure building behind the scenes. Because fame doesn't just elevate you, it exposes you. Every move becomes public, every mistake magnified, every decision questioned. Slowly, almost without noticing, the line between who she really was and who people thought she was began to blur. And then, it disappeared completely. She became an image, a version of herself shaped by expectations and perceptions. And once you become an image, you lose something important. You lose the freedom to be human. No fear, no doubt, no weakness. At least not in public. So she played the role perfectly. She gave people exactly what they expected, exactly what they wanted to see, even when it started to break her from the inside. At first, it was subtle, almost unnoticeable. A comment here, a compromise there. Small things she convinced herself didn't matter, things she brushed aside because they seemed insignificant in the bigger picture. But over time, those small moments began to stack up, turning into something much heavier, something harder to ignore. Control started creeping in. Pressure became constant. Silence became expected. She was surrounded by people, managers, collaborators, industry figures, but somehow she had never felt more alone. Decisions were made for her. Paths were chosen without her full voice being heard. Expectations were placed on her shoulders without asking if she could carry them. And slowly, piece by piece, she started losing control of her own story. The most difficult part wasn't just what was happening, it was the fact that no one outside could see it. To the world, she was still winning, still shining, still unstoppable. But behind closed doors, there were moments where everything felt uncertain, moments where she questioned her choices, her direction, even her identity. And yet, she stayed. Because walking away didn't just mean leaving, it meant risking everything she had built, everything she had fought for. And staying? Staying meant losing something else, something less visible, but far more important, something much harder to get back once it's gone. Everyone has a limit, a moment where everything that once felt manageable suddenly becomes too heavy to carry. For her, that moment didn't arrive like an explosion. It didn't come with shouting or chaos. Instead, it built quietly, almost invisibly over time, a slow accumulation of exhaustion, frustration, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Day after day, she kept going, kept performing, kept pretending that everything was still under control, but inside, something was shifting. Maybe it was the weight of expectations that never seemed to ease. Maybe it was the realization that no matter how much she gave, it was never enough. Or maybe it was clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop ignoring what you've been feeling for too long. And then, one day, it happened. Not dramatically, not publicly, but internally. Something clicked. She stopped pretending, stopped accepting things that didn't feel right, stopped staying silent just to keep the peace. And for the first time in years, she made a decision that wasn't about her career, her image, or anyone else's expectations. She chose herself. But that choice came with consequences. Because when you walk away from what people expect of you, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose people. Support fades, security disappears. The certainty you once relied on suddenly feels fragile. And just like that, everything changes. The world that once felt structured becomes uncertain, and she found herself standing there again, alone. Not because she failed, but because she finally refused to compromise who she was. Starting over sounds powerful when you say it out loud. It sounds like freedom, like a fresh beginning, like something people admire from a distance. But in reality, it's something else entirely. It's uncertainty, it's fear. It's waking up every day without knowing if the decision you made will lead to something better or nothing at all. For her, rebuilding wasn't a choice filled with excitement, it was a necessity. There were no guarantees waiting for her on the other side, no safety net to catch her if things didn't work out, no clear roadmap showing her where to go next, just a decision and the courage to stand by it. She had to rebuild everything from the ground up, not just her career, but her sense of identity, her confidence, her belief in herself. And this time, things were different. This time, she wasn't willing to compromise. She wasn't willing to let others define her path or control her narrative. It was just her instincts, her passion, and the reason she started in the first place. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks that made her question everything, moments of doubt that crept in when things didn't go as planned, times when giving up seemed like the simplest option. But something had changed inside her. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She wasn't trying to prove things to anyone. She was chasing something real, something honest. And slowly, almost quietly, things began to shift. Not all at once, not in a way that the world immediately noticed, but enough for her to feel it, enough to know she was finally moving forward on her own terms.
People admire success, but what truly captures their attention is a comeback, the return, the moment when someone who was once overlooked, doubted, or written off proves that they were never truly gone. And her comeback? It wasn't loud or predictable. It didn't follow the script people expected. That's what made it powerful. Because when she returned, she wasn't the same person who had once stood in that spotlight. She was different, stronger in ways people couldn't immediately see, sharper in how she carried herself, in how she made decisions, in how she chose what mattered. There was a confidence there, but not the kind that comes from external validation. This was something deeper, something earned. This time, she wasn't just performing for the audience. She was telling her story on her terms. Every word, every moment, every expression carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. Because now there was truth behind it, real experience, real struggle. And people noticed. Not just the fans who had always supported her, but the same industry that once questioned her, the same voices that doubted her ability to stand on her own. Now they couldn't ignore her, because she wasn't asking for a place anymore. She wasn't waiting for approval or recognition. She had already taken her place by simply refusing to step back. And that's what made her return so powerful. It wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about finally proving something to herself. For years, she avoided the questions. Not directly, not in a way that made headlines, but in subtle ways that kept people guessing. She would redirect conversations, keep things vague, offer just enough to satisfy curiosity without revealing anything real. It wasn't because she was ashamed. It wasn't because she didn't have answers. It was because she wasn't ready. Because some truths take time. Time to understand fully. Time to accept without fear. Time to say out loud without feeling like the world will interpret them the wrong way. And for her, that time took years. Years of reflection, of growth, of slowly coming to terms with parts of herself she once kept hidden. But now, something has changed. At 64, she's no longer avoiding those conversations. Not because she suddenly wants attention, but because silence no longer serves her. She's opening up, not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. And that honesty carries a different kind of power. Because the truth isn't always dramatic. It isn't always loud or shocking in the way people expect. Sometimes it's quiet, simple, even uncomfortable, but real. And that's what makes it meaningful. For the first time in her life, she isn't shaping her truth to fit expectations. She isn't filtering it to make others comfortable. She's simply allowing it to exist. And that alone changes everything. Because when someone who has spent a lifetime being guarded finally opens up, even a little, it speaks louder than anything they've ever said before. Fame is temporary. It rises, peaks, and eventually fades, no matter how powerful it once felt. Trends change, audiences shift, and what once dominated headlines slowly becomes part of history. But impact, that's something different. Impact doesn't disappear. It stays. It evolves. It continues long after the spotlight moves on. And hers? It's undeniable. She didn't just build a career for herself. She changed something much bigger than that. She created space where there wasn't any before. For people like her. For those who felt unseen, unheard, underestimated. For those who were told no before they even had a chance to try. She became proof that those limitations didn't have to define anyone, that you don't need permission to step into your own path, that you don't need approval to believe in your own voice, that you don't have to fit into expectations that were never made for you. Her journey wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't predictable.
But that's exactly what made it meaningful. Because it showed something real. That success isn't just about reaching a certain level. It's about staying true to yourself while you get there. Even when it's difficult, even when it feels isolating, even when no one else understands what you're trying to do. Because sometimes, the very thing that makes your journey harder is also what makes it matter. In the end, this was never just about success. It wasn't just about fame, recognition, or the kind of achievements people celebrate from the outside. It was about something deeper, something more personal, more complicated, more real. It was about identity, about understanding who you are beyond what the world sees. It was about truth, the kind that doesn't always fit neatly into expectations, the kind that takes time to accept, the kind that can't be forced. And most of all, it was about freedom. The freedom to exist without constantly performing, without constantly proving something, without constantly carrying the weight of an image that no longer feels authentic. For years, she built that image carefully, protected it, lived within it, because it was necessary, because it was expected. But now, things are different. Now she's finally allowing herself to step beyond it, to embrace who she really is, not the version people created, not the version the world celebrated, but the one that existed all along beneath the surface. Not perfect, not untouchable, not invincible, but real. And maybe that's the most powerful transformation of all. Because behind every person who seems strong, confident, and unbreakable, there's a story filled with moments no one else sees, struggles no one else fully understands, and truths that aren't always easy to share. Until one day, they finally are.